Hi, good morning. My name is Sarah. I'm the designer behind the balance pattern, and this is the Dayscape Top pattern sew-along, my newest pattern, and I'm so excited that we get to do this together. All right, so first of all, I do want to chit chat about a few things, but I also don't want it to be like super long, so I'm gonna try and do this as fast as I can or as painless as possible, whichever you prefer. Anyway, so the Dayscape top, what is the Dayscape top? It's like my take on a boho blouse. I'm actually wearing view 3 here. It has this cute adjustable tie at the front. I would say an A-line gathered silhouette, but what's nice about this pattern is that I really wanted to have the gathered effect, flowiness of a boho blouse without it being too overwhelming on the silhouette. Or if you have like a bigger chest, you know what it means when it like looks like a tent. So I wanted to have the visual effect of what that type of blouse does without having it being like too much fabric, too much gathering, or like feel like you're being swallowed in something. So that was my main goal for this pattern. Also, one of the other main goal of this pattern was to have not as little coverage as possible, but I wanted it to be not super high neck, but I still wanted you to be able to wear it with a bra. So I had to have that piece here, which turns into the cutest type of keyhole tie detail at the upper back. I'll put some pictures here, and as you can see, I am wearing a bra underneath, so that works. Great, amazing. The top also features a really cool channel or way of constructing the top, which I'm very proud of, to be honest. And we'll get more into that when we get to doing the channels later on. I think I want to have a bit of a chat before, not each step or something, just so you can see like what my thinking was when I made the pattern, or just so it makes a bit more sense, or the logic behind why I designed it the way that I did. And lastly, with that pattern, you have 2 lengths. So you have a cropped or a longer length, and then you have 3 sleeves. That's the third sleeve, the long sleeve. Then you have a short straight sleeve, I would say, with the same amount of gathers here, so it's nothing like crazy. And then you have a puffy sleeve that ends just above your elbow. So that's for the design. I feel like I did this quick. I'm very proud of myself. Okay, as for fabric, so you want to go with light to mid-weight woven, things like cotton, linen, rayon. You could even do like silk or something like that, but I will just say, and it's written in the pattern too, if you're working with a slippery fabric like silk or satin weave, I highly recommend you interface some of the pieces, especially the channels, the sleeve hems, and then also the shoulder yoke. The reason being is that for this pattern, there are a lot of small rectangular pieces that you need to work with, or like fold pieces and stuff. And I'm telling you, if you work with a fabric that's more slippery or that frays a lot, you're gonna hate the process of doing it. So actually, for one of my samples, which I'll show you right now. So for this gorge cow print satin top, I did interface all my channels and everything else, and honestly it really helped, because even my ties on this top, like, they don't hold because the fabric is so slippery, and I think I would have hated myself if I didn't. So that's just something I want to note. And as for interfacing, I would suggest something like very light. It's just so that your piece have a bit more hold and it doesn't fray as much. That's my suggestion, and it's written in the pattern as well, but I just wanted to mention it. Then what else? Okay, yeah. For my samples, or for the ones that I use in the photo shoot where it's the short version, I have a short torso, so mine are actually 2.5 centimeter or a whole inch shorter than the actual pattern. And then lastly, before we start, also want to mention that generally all of my patterns have a 1.5 seam allowance. This pattern is a bit different because there are quite a few 1 centimeter seam allowance, especially in the channels and stuff like that. So just make sure you pay attention to that when you're sewing. But yeah, what I meant to say was that generally all my patterns have a 1.5 seam allowance, but I prefer to sew with a 1 centimeter seam allowance, so I always adjust my personal patterns to have a 1 centimeter seam allowance. So that being said, if during the tutorial you find that my seams look skinny, that's the reason why. It doesn't change anything. And yeah, I think that's all of my yapping for before the tutorial. As I said, I think I'll jump in at different points during the tutorial just to explain certain things or whatever. So we'll see about that. But yeah, that's it, and I'll see you later. Goodbye. The first part of this tutorial is I always like to start with the really annoying pieces to do, which is often all the ties and like really small pieces. So that's what we'll be starting with, the front and back ties, and then we'll do the shoulder yoke right away. That's what we're going to be starting with. So let's go. All right, so because we're starting with the front and back ties, the first thing you want to do is fold one of the short ends of the front and back ties 1 centimeter to the wrong side and press. Then you want to repeat that step for each side, so 4 times in total. Then wrong sides together, you'll fold the tie lengthwise and press. Next, you'll want to open the ties and fold the edges inward so that they meet at the crease that we just did in the center. And then you also want to press that. So for the last step here, you just want to press everything back together so that all the raw edges are encased and you have your final tie here. And then just to finish it off, you want to stitch around the folded edge. Alright, so now that we have all our ties, you want to keep the back ties for now. And what we'll do is take the shoulder yoke pieces, and the unfinished end of the back tie should align at the end of the extended part of the yoke. And you want to basically sandwich the second shoulder yoke over top of it. So both your yokes are right sides together and the back tie is sandwiched in between. The next step is to actually stitch that side of the yoke. Then what you want to do is basically notch in your seam, especially in the curved area near the yoke extension, because that's where you're going to need it the most. Then you want to also clip in the corners around where the tie is stitched. And once that's all done, you want to turn everything right side out. At this point, you can also understitch that seam if you want on the wrong side of your yoke, but that's optional. Okay, so now we're done with our shoulder yoke pieces, which great, amazing. And we're going into the front channel, which, listen, nothing about this is really complicated. It's just a bit different than what I think your typical construction would be. So I just want to maybe explain what my thinking was when I decided to finish the front of the top that way. So when I was brainstorming about this top, about what I wanted it to have, I knew I wanted to have a drawstring channel at the front that was adjustable, and then I knew I also wanted the neckline to cover a bra strap. But the thing is, with an adjustable tie or channel, I didn't want it to go all the way into the neckline, so I knew they had to be 2 different pieces, my bodice and then the shoulder piece. So then I was kind of brainstorming how I could actually sew this together or finish it. And the thing is, I couldn't just like make this piece longer and then fold it over top, because then this piece would be floating, or how do you finish this inside? So what I came up with was a channel that what you see on the outside would be what is usually on the inside, and that would cover all the seam allowances that are in that area. So basically the seam allowance from the shoulder yoke is inside the channel, and then the channel itself, like all the seam allowances, are on the inside. So that was the idea behind that. And it's also the same concept at the back. I knew I wanted this to have a facing, so otherwise it would have been a lot of small pieces and a lot of overlocked seams, and I just didn't really want that look. I don't like when things are very flimsy. The thing where it gets complicated is that you have to sew a couple things wrong sides together, so it's about like just making sure that you really follow the instruction as they are. You really gotta trust the process on this one. Then I just want to mention the openings at the front channel. So I remember a couple years ago, I saw this video on Instagram where it was a button-down shirt, and the placket at the front there was a seam running through it, and then the buttonholes were part of the seam. So it's like you sew this part, then you don't sew this part, then you sew this part, then you don't sew this part, and then the spaces where there was no seam was the buttonholes. So another thing about me is whenever I'm sewing a project, I don't like to jump between different machines or settings. So I kind of didn't want to do the classic buttonholes at the front of my channel. So instead, I kind of took inspiration from that video that I saw. Listen, I tried to find it again. I can't, but I just remembered that and I was like, oh, that would be really cool for the front channel. So the openings at the front channel, it's as if you're doing a pleat, but then snipping the back of it and opening that, so you're left with a hole. So on the pattern pieces, it's clearly, hopefully, written that the markings, which I'll show you my piece, it's like mangled at this point, but the markings here, you do not want to cut through that. The reason why is because your marking is your seam and this is going to be your opening. So you don't want to snip through your fabric and then you have the little space. It's 1 centimeter on one side and I think 1.5 centimeter on the other side. So you don't want to snip through half of this, then your seam allowance is only going to be 0.5 mm. That's just not going to hold. So that's the reason why you want to mark these. I really highly suggest you mark it on the right and wrong side of your fabric because it's just easier when you're folding the markings together. These two are going to be folded together and sewn together. So it's easier when you have the markings on both sides because you don't have the visual aid of a snip through your fabric to guide you. So that's the concept for the front channel and the reason why I made it that way. Honestly, I think this part of the top is just really fun to sew, and to me that's what makes me excited about sewing something different. I'm kind of really proud of this part of the patterns. So yeah, we're gonna jump into making the front channel, and I'm not gonna come back here for the back bodice because the instructions for the front and back channels are basically the same. So yeah, I'll see you once that's done. All right, so now we're doing the front channel. So just a note here that the 2 channel openings for the front channel and the markings that you see on your pattern piece, they work in pairs. So pair of marking closest to the left edge of the piece are meant to work together, and then the pair closest to the right edge are meant to work together. So what you want to do is fold the front channel openings using these markings as if you were folding a pleat. So the markings should lay on top of each other and they should also be folded right sides together. Then you want to switch your machine to have a shorter stitch and stitch over the length of the markings for each channel openings. So you really want to follow your markings here and stitch on top of them. Then you want to cut along the edge of the seam that we just made, so along that pleat, and then you want to press that seam open. From there, you should be able to see the opening in the middle of each seam pretty clearly. Then the last step is to fold the bottom edge, that's the longer one, of the front channel 1 centimeter to the wrong side and press well. And then you just want to set that piece aside for the next step. Alright, so for this next step, in the instructions, they are separate, but I like to do them all at once. It's just I wanted to keep them separate in the instruction just so there was no confusion. But basically what you want to do, and you want to be very mindful here, you want to place your shoulder yokes wrong sides together with the front. You're going to see there's some notches on the side, so the side of your shoulder yoke should align with those notches. And then in the instruction, the number 12 is to actually just base stitch them in place, but I like to do 12 and 13 at the same time. So once your shoulder yokes are either base stitched or in my case just pinned down, you want to put your front channel over top your shoulder yokes, and your front channel is going to be right side facing the wrong side of the front, and then your shoulder yokes are going to be sandwiched in between. Once you have all of those gorgeous pieces together, you want to sew them together using a 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. So the next step is you actually just want to flip the front channel, press that seam down, and then top stitch it 2 mm from the seam. Once your first top stitch is done, you want to flip the front and your shoulder yoke so that all your pieces are facing right sides up. Then what you want to do is press the front channel down so it covers all your unfinished seams, and you want to stitch the channel 2 mm from the folded edge to create a channel for the ties. Alright, so for the back channels, we are starting by holding the bottom edge, the longer one of the back channel, 1 centimeter to the wrong side, and pressing it. Then you just want to set it aside for the next step. Alright, so like I said before, from there on out, the steps for the back channels are pretty much the same as the steps for the front channel. So the first thing you want to do is take your shoulder yokes and place them wrong sides together with the back. In the instruction, there's a step where you base stitch the shoulder yokes to the back, but like I did previously, I'm just gonna pin them down. Then, just like we did for the front, you want to place the back channel over top, right sides with the wrong side of the back, and the shoulder yokes are sandwiched in between. Once that's done, you want to sew through all the layers 1.5 centimeter from the edge. Once that seam is done, you want to flip your channel over and then first press it, and then you want to top stitch it 2 mm from the seam. Next, what you want to do is flip the back and shoulder yokes so that all your pieces are now facing right side up. Then you want to press your back channel down so it covers all your unfinished seams, and you want to top stitch the folded edge to create a channel for your elastic. Alright, so we're done with the channels. I hope it went well for you. I personally find it so satisfying to see the clean inside. It's just the best. And the next steps are very simple. It's basically sewing the side seams and finishing it using either an overlocker or a zigzag stitch. I also like that whenever I can not to use an overlocker, because if you didn't know, my machine only does a straight stitch. So for the first few years after school, I tried to avoid having finishes that required anything other than a straight stitch machine. So I try to bring that as much as possible in my patterns too, because that's not everyone that has either an overlocker or the possibility to use anything other than a straight stitch. And also, it's still in the same vein as I don't like to switch between machines or settings or anything, so that's the reason why. But yeah, basically it's the side seams we're doing next, and then you can always keep that to the end, but I always like to do my hem not at the end because it's just tedious for me. So you fold and press twice 6 mm to the wrong side and then top stitching it. After that, I'll come back here to explain a bit about the elastic at the back and how at the front it works here. So I'll see you then. Alright, so here we're just finishing up the bodice. So right sides together, you want to stitch your side seams and then finish it, whether it's with an overlocker or a zigzag stitch. I use an overlocker. Once that's done, you want to press your seam towards the back and repeat on the other side. Next, like I mentioned before, we're doing the hem right away. So what you want to do is fold and press your hem 6 mm to the wrong side. You want to do that twice so that the raw edge is hidden, and then you want to stitch 2 mm from the folded edge to finish your hem. Okay, so at this point, we're done with the hem, we're done with the side seam. The only thing left to do on the bodice is to put the elastic in the back and the ties at the front. And I know it sounds just like a really small step, but I wanted to explain a bit of the thinking behind how it all comes together. So when I was thinking about the design, I initially wanted the tie to go all the way to the armhole or the arm side. But the thing is, whenever I did that, I tried it in the earlier prototypes, it would really pull at the arm seam, and then it would also make the shoulder yoke gather a bit too much, and I really didn't like that. I felt that it was opening the door to a lot of not fit issue, but it was easy for it to look messy or look like it was pulling too much, especially because it's so dependent on your anatomy, how tight you want to pull this, that I knew it was gonna be harder for it to have like a consistent final look across the board if I didn't put a seam in here to basically stop the gathering of the front tie and to prevent any type of pulling in this area. So, and it's the same thing at the back. However, because the shoulder yoke stops here, which is about like halfway down my breast, what happens is that yes, you have the adjustment here, but you won't have that here on the side, which you can see it does on me because I have like bigger-ish chest. So it kind of does a little bit of pulling here because there's no bust adjustment, you know, there's no dart at the side seam or anything. It was either the gathering goes all the way there, there's no pulling here because you have the adjustment across the whole chest, but there's going to be a lot of pulling at the armhole and this part. So I made the decision to the seam right here. However, if you have a bigger chest, or it might not even happen to you, like depending on your body and everything, that's just a little sideline about the adjustment here on the front. Then whenever you put your tie in, I took into account that this space here is dead space for the tie and the elastic at the back. So your tie still goes right up to here, but basically you make a seam here. It stops it from moving for this length. It's taken into account in the length of the elastic at the back and in the length of the ties at the front. And yeah, that's it. So I'll go put in my ties, put in my elastic, and then we're gonna be doing the sleeve. So I'll see you then. All right, so I went over pretty much everything about inserting the front ties and the elastic. So what you want to do is just use a safety pin, and then you want to insert the front ties in the front channel, and you want to insert your front ties with the finished end going in first. When the free end of the tie comes close to entering the channel, you want to top stitch the width of the channel going through all of the layers and the tie where the yoke meets the neckline. Once one side is done, you want to repeat the same thing on the other side. Alright, so now that we have the front done, you want to do the back channel with the elastic. So there is a chart in the instruction with the elastic length. This might change depending on your body, depending on your preference. So these are just a reference point. So same thing here, using a safety pin, you want to inside the elastic in the back channel. So when the free end of the elastic comes close to entering the channel, you once again want to top stitch the channel width going through all the layers where the yoke meets the neckline. And then the only difference here is that you want to keep feeding the elastic through the channel until your safety pin pokes through the other side. Then you want to repeat that step, top stitching through all your layers where the yoke meets the neckline on the other side. All right, friends, we're done with the bodice. So hold on, I'll just show it to you quickly. So this is where we might take different paths. So for the tutorial, I decided to go on and make the puffy sleeve because it has the exact same instruction as the long sleeve. The only thing is that the sleeves themselves, the pieces, have different shapes, but it's the same construction. So you can use this video if you're making the long sleeve as well. As for the short sleeve, honestly, it's just a straight sleeve. So you just have to do the hem, which is turned twice over, 6 mm, and then sewn, and it only has a bit of gathers at the top, so it's like a very simple sleeve. It's the most simple sleeve out of the three. And yeah, I think the next time we see each other face to face, the top will be done and I might be in the studio because I'm shooting the pictures tomorrow, so I'll see you then. All right, so like I said before, these instructions for the puffy sleeve can also be used for the long sleeve. So we'll start by folding one long side of the hem 1 centimeter to the wrong side and pressing it. Then right sides together, you want to stitch the unfolded edge of the puff sleeve hem to the bottom edge of the sleeve using a 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. Next, you want to flip that sleeve hem and press the seam allowance down. Alright, so follow me here for the next step. So you want to flip your sleeve so the wrong side is up, and then what you want to do is take your sleeve hem and basically fold it in half so that your folded edge comes right up to cover where you just made your seam, so that your seam allowance is covered. And what you want to do next is just press it down to make sure everything looks good. Now that all our prep is done, what you want to do next is unfold the hem, unfold everything, and just press your sleeve right sides together and then sew down your side seam using a 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. Once that's done, you want to overlock or finish the seam and then press it towards the back. Alright, so this is where all the prep we did comes in handy. So what you want to do next is refold the hem and press everything back how it was. Next, what you want to do is stitch 2 mm from the folded edge to finish the hem, but leave a gap at the underarm because that's where we're going to put the elastic through. By the way, there is no chart in the instruction for the length of the elastic here. It's really personal preference. I like mine to be a bit looser, so you just want to wrap the elastic around your arm just right above your elbow, or if you're doing the longer sleeve where your wrist is, and then you just want it to be comfortable. Add a bit of length to make sure you can overlap the elastic ends and then cut your elastic. Next, you want to insert the elastic into the hem using a safety pin. You just want to make sure here that whenever you feed your elastic through the hem that it doesn't get twisted. Alright, so next you want to pull both ends of your elastic out and overlap them and sew them together just to make sure that the elastic is secured. And once that's done, you want to pull the elastic back into the sleeve hem and then stitch the gap. Alright, so now we want to make 2 rows of gathering stitches in between the set of notches that are closest to the sleeve head. As always, I prefer to use elastic thread to do my gathering, and there's also an annex in the instructions to see my favorite gathering technique, so you can check that out. Alright, so next what you want to do is insert the sleeve into the bodice, right sides together, and then either you want to pull on your gathering stitches or just make sure that the notches on the sleeve match the notches on the bodice. Then you want to distribute your gathers evenly and just pin everything in place so it looks good. Alright, so then what you want to do is actually stitch the sleeve to the bodice using a 1.5 centimeter seam allowance, and then you want to just overlock or finish that seam. Alright, so this is the final look. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you want to see all the other samples or all the other views, they're on my website. And yeah, it turned out so cute. I'm so happy. I hope you're gonna love this pattern as much as I do. If you make it, please tag me in it. Let me know, send me a DM, an email, whatever. I just want to see it. And yeah, that's it. Goodbye.